Good evening, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, I couldn't help but to continue to talk about the lumber industry and the crisis that we will be soon facing once the noticeable shortages then becomes prevalent within the economy to the point that it will become news articles that you find out there. Nobody's going to really notice this until it's too late. And in my opinion, it's already too late. Now, when you think about some of the things that we have faced here over the last year, especially the last few months of mill curtailments and inventory depletion, it is really now starting to show up in many different details that you can find not only on the internet, but then through many of the lumber like literature that I get that kind of gives me an idea of what it is that's going on within the different industries or different regions within this industry. It's now showing up in other nations as well, and I thought this was very interesting to find the exact problems that we will soon be facing with lumber shortages showing up in places like Belize, and I left a link down in the description for it. Now, of course, this doesn't have anything to do with the United States market, but it does show what it is that's going to happen not only in the past here when we had shortages, but what's taken place in Belize is something that I feel is going to be taking place here in the future when it comes to the building industry in the United States. Now, that being the shortages of lumber, that is going to then become, like I said, very obvious to the people the moment that there is a demand for it that picks up. And this is really like something that a lot of times when we try to focus in on what it is that's happening out there, we have a tendency to look outside of our, basically our bedroom window to see. No, I'm just kidding. We go and look out there to go and see what it is that's going on outside of our neighborhoods or in our cities or in our, particular areas of view, and then try to relate that to being the entire industry out there. And that's not what's going on. What you really have to look at is the entire industry as a whole. And considering some of the things that have taken place within the tariffs on Canadian lumber, and then the low pricing and high costs that is now going into lumber production is now showing itself in the mill production curtailment. And so when I go out and I look for lumber myself, like for me, I think about some of the times that I have experienced in the past when I ask a vendor for a particular unit of lumber or asking for pricing. It's really easy, very simple, nothing to it. Usually plenty of stock out there, and the pricing is usually generally fairly consistent. Like if you get a price from one vendor, most likely you're going to be within a few per thousand of the other vendors that are out there. But now we're finding that the pricing is all over the place. And of course, this has to do with, their position and where it is that they got that lumber, when they got that lumber, how long they've been sitting on it, and then where it is that they are going to get more lumber into the future. And now this is all coming into some high uncertainty. And so when I think about the cost of building a home going into the future, and now I think this is probably like the biggest thing to think about is that a lot of times people will think, well, lumber doesn't cost that much. Even if you were to double the price of it, it's really not going to add that much to the cost of a house. And I totally agree with that. But it's the lag time of acquiring the lumber. And that's really where the problem starts to come up. And this is one of the things that I wanted to share down in the link to the article I shared, is that that's one of the things that they are talking about right now, is that some of the builders, like people who are looking to construct new projects, are searching everywhere they can for it. And that's something that we are seeing right now here in the United States, is that the studs, the pre-cut studs, are now starting to make a move towards the East Coast because there's a lacking of available pre-cut studs within the framing market as far as framing material goes. And so when you think about the shortages that are happening within the East Coast, and now they're in search of these pre-cut studs wherever they can get them, and they're finding them all the way over on the West Coast, This is the same evidence that is essentially happening in Belize with their lumber shortage, as they are now in search of wherever they can within their area in order to acquire the lumber they need. So again, like you can see it happening there. Of course, again, it's a completely different industry, completely different market, but it's the fact that it's happening and the evidence that you see from it. It's the symptoms of it that you are looking for, and those things are reflective here in the United States when you think about how it is that the East Coast is dragging the West Coast studs across the nation at a rail cost, fuel cost, energy cost, whatever it is that they need to pay in order to get those studs over to the east side. That's added cost as opposed to milling them there themselves, which is, like I said, been in huge curtailment and with the lack of Canadian lumber coming in. All right, so if you go to build a house, you're like, hey man, it's a great time. I'm going to build a house. I happen to be in it. And you go to acquire the lumber and it's not there. Now you're going to start adding costs to that house. And this is really where I think a lot of times people have a tendency to misunderstand how it is that this is really going to drive the price of a home up, or at least prevent the home cost or the cost of building a home from to fall. It will prevent it from happening. And so when I think about like some of the things that I am experiencing at the lumber yard itself, to come out here and share that information with you right away, I feel is very important. To think right now, I had the buyer for the yard, who is essentially, he does pretty much all the commercial accounts. He come to me and he says, hey man, if you are buying lumber for anybody, if you are, trying to sell a unit of lumber, he says, you have to check availability and you got to double check price. Do not quote it out of the computer. And I thought, wow, man, that is something to think about. So for the most part, you come into the store and I'll be like, yeah, I'll sell you everything I got in the yard at this price. But if I need to bring in more, I need to come up with another price. And now that is not, I mean, it is typical to double check your pricing, but it's not typical to be warned of it to say you've got to do it, right? Generally, you can say, oh, yeah, I can get another unit in for you, no problem. And it would be within that reason of that price. Now we're going to start finding the volatility kicking in with the lack of availability and the promise to bring inflation down. I don't know. I don't know what's going to cause people's expectations to. I don't know where people's expectations are going to go with the new Warsh chairman position of the Federal Reserve, but I can only assume that people are going to have some sort of belief system in the future that the inflationary scenario is going to come down. And if that is to take place, I really feel that that would slow the economy down. Right now, for the most part, for the foreseeable like future, when it comes to the short term, until I don't know how to like explain the short term, 6 months, a year, most likely in that timeline there will be elevated inflation and inflation expectations. After that, it's going to be very questionable, right? And now it is of my opinion that they will attempt to keep the inflation expectation going as long as possible, and even into the future years from now, that I would not be surprised to see elevated inflation and inflation expectations, one series after another, with the promise of getting back to that 2% target, and always just missing the mark because of one unfortunate series of events after the other. What is it? What is it? Jiminy Snickets, right? Or not Jiminy, Lemony Snickets. What was that movie? Series of unfortunate events. That's what the Federal Reserve is going to be facing, to their benefit, of course. Now, considering that to be the case, we will find that if the inflation stays elevated, that the economy will most likely become less restricted. And I know that sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people out there who would really feel that the inflation coming down would be a benefit, but rising would be concerning. If it was to rise and the Federal Reserve was to stay still, the economy will slip into a negative real interest rate environment. And I could only assume that that would start creating more demand within the housing market. I know that sounds very different from what a lot of the other economists are going to be saying out there, But this is how the Federal Reserve is looking at the economy and looking at monetary policy, including wars. And so to relate like the housing industry to the new monetary policy is really now your focus is to look at the Federal Reserve itself, the Fed funds rate, which is the essentially the overnight lending rate between the big banks, and really, as my buddy George Gammon had said early, it's the interest on excess reserves. And that's really the best way to look at it, because that's like the worst interest rate that anybody would ever want to go for, and everything is kind of higher from there. So when we look at the Federal Reserve and what it is that they're doing, excuse me, they're going to try and maintain that Fed funds rate. And I've been saying this for a long time, and this is important to understand, because if you want to know if the housing market is going to become unrestricted or more restricted or accommodating or however you want to look at it, you really have to focus in not in on the nominal interest rates, like the interest rates that everybody is like looking at, but the real interest rate, which is the interest rate after the inflation expectation. So if the Fed sits still and that inflation expectation rises, you are definitely going to find an economy that is far less restricted than anybody would have given it consideration for. The housing market will start to become unrestricted. It'll take some time. It's a lagging market, so it might take a little bit of time for it to eventually present itself. But when it does, there's not going to be enough lumber in the system to support any kind of significant demand to building. There will come a time at some point where there will be an increase in the demand for building. Like, it doesn't stay down forever, right? I mean, like nothing goes up forever, nothing goes down forever. Just like the stock market isn't going to go up forever, the housing market isn't going to stay restricted forever either. And I know a lot of people are looking for that worst case scenario in order to acquire a piece of property and say, hey, man, I finally got my piece of the American dream. They really have to think about what it was that was taking place that would have given them the ability to get that house, considering where it was that the American standard of living was for the average everyday person. Because there were so many people who were working average everyday jobs who could go and get a house, and when the jobs fell, the the income fell, they weren't able to make their house payment. And this is really where I think a lot of times people are like, that's it, that's what I'm looking for, that moment right there where the recession kicks in and people can't make their payments and the foreclosures kick up. That's the moment that I'm looking for. And what I have to ask people at that time, and it was just like, okay, so generally when this is taking place, this moment, it is a very restricted economy that doesn't have a whole lot of ability to go out there and acquire loans. So unless you have the cash or significant cash flow or significant down payment and you are mighty ready to go, then you're most likely going to miss the opportunity. And the people who will be picking up those cheap houses are the rich who have the cash to buy them. And so this is a very like obvious thing that happens. If you just look back through history, that's the way it occurs. And so if you think about like a drop in the housing market that is so significant that you could call it like a crash, most of the average people are going to miss out on the opportunity unless they are already prepared to do it today. Most people are not prepared to do it today because they don't have a job that is going to be able to be capable of making the payments, considering the interest rates and the high valuation of the properties. So they're not in the game. And that's important to understand, because it's not that it used to be they were in the game. And that's where it's like everybody still thinks that's how it's occurring. And it's not occurring like that any longer. So now we have to look at it as just like, okay, so what is taking place here is that we are essentially becoming renter nation, which means that the properties themselves are concentrating into the hands of the few. As people will then think about this as being like a conspiratorial idea of like the rich elite is getting together to do all this stuff. And it's, it's true, because they are doing it. But they think this is the Cantillon effect playing out, because essentially this is what he was saying. This is how he said it would play out if you continue to inject new money into the system, is that you will concentrate the property into the hands of a few, deprive everybody else from the ability to acquire the things that they need in their life, and they'll fall even further down the line. When the new money turns off, everybody falls into pain and misery. So that's like, an understanding of economic forces that is not something that you can just forget about. You can't just say, hey, that isn't going to occur. But to also understand that you can take a position right now that can acquire the things that you need in your life, but you do have to understand that it's probably not going to happen with just that day job, right? Because if you had the ability to buy a piece of property, stop by the lumber yard, pick up some lumber on the way home, nail yourself together a house, piece it together over the course of a summer, and then say, hey man, I got a place to live, then people would do it, right? They would do it. But that's not what happens nowadays. Now people can say, well, that's permitting, that's all kinds of. But then again, it's not necessarily the permitting or anything else. It's literally the people do not have the ability to do it themselves. That was a skill that was shared amongst many people back in the day. Everybody used to be able to be mechanics or carpenters or something because we were all manufacturers, producers of stuff. And if you couldn't produce or manufacture this particular thing that you needed in your life, you could trade your skills because you were producing, manufacturing something else with that person. So there was plenty of mechanics and plenty of carpenters and plenty of all these people all around to share these skills with each other so that we could all have these things at a fairly reasonable expectation price because we were sharing our reasonable skills with each other. But now you don't know anybody who really has the ability to be a carpenter who can actually put a house together. And if you did, they're probably doing a fairly successful business. And if they're not, they're probably not a successful carpenter, or they made some bad decisions with their debt operations, all in the idea of is not something that is a skill that we're going to share with each other. Right? Because they're going to have problems and bills and necessities and equipment and labor and insurance and all the other stuff that goes with it, where really all you have to be able to do is just put the thing together. But if you have to pay somebody to do it, it's going to get real expensive real fast. But if everybody around you had the ability to do it, it wouldn't be that expensive. It wouldn't even be that valuable, right? And this is how, again, this is like to understand the situation we now face. It's not like you can just wave a magic wand and fix it. Once the problem set in, you can't repair it. It's already too late. Right? It's already too late. People are like, I'm going to build a house today. Okay, fine. Let's go find a piece of land. I know. Okay, you already have the land? Well, that's cool. Do you have the permit for it? Do you have the prepping? Is it all ready to go? No. Do you have contractors lined up for any of that stuff? Do you have financing for it? All these problems, and if you've never done it before, well, now it's a learning process. It's going to probably take a hell of a lot longer than a year, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're really good at it. You can just knock it out for the first time in your life. But I'd like look into it. It's like there's always stuff that you don't know about, right? Now, if you've done it a zillion times, no problem. You know exactly what step is next to get it done. Hey, man, you might be able to knock it out pretty quick. But if you're new to this game and you're going to try and build your house and you're like, have no idea on what it is that is exactly happening, and you go to get your lumber package because the contractor's saying, hey, man, you're going to try and contract your own house, and the framer's up there and he's saying, okay, get my framing package. I'm ready to go. My crew's here. And if we're not, if we can't get this thing started here this week, we're out and we're not coming back for another 8 months, right? Or you're not going to be able to get us again for another 8 months. Holy moly, right? That would be a wholly dangerous situation to be in if you have no idea what's going on because you didn't realize that the lumber package was going to be like, essentially non-existent because there was no warning sign out there until it was too late. Yeah. Ain't happened to, like, just because it hasn't happened to the people yet doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. And, it's true. Yeah, sure. Maybe there will never be any uptick in demand. Maybe. Maybe that will be the case. Like, they will never, from this point on, we'll never, ever, ever see any kind of uptick in demand from here. And if that was the case, then I guess, okay, I'll be wrong. But at some point, the demand is going to pick up because everything turns around. Like, and nothing goes up or down forever. And so when it does turn around and people are like, "Yahoo, let's go and start building, man. There's time. Like the economic activity's happening. Let's get out there and make it go." And then there's no lumber. And then they're like, "Oh crap, now what?" Boom, 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 right? Logistics start piling up and people are like, "Hey man, I got subs. We got to get this thing done. If you don't have these walls built, what are we going to do to, as far as lining these guys up? You're going to miss them." And then trying to figure it out from that point on might get very hard, especially if there's, a lot of activity happening all at once. Everybody's going to be like, right now, it'd be like, no, man, I can find anybody I want. Right now, super easy. I call up, ask for an electrician. He says, and that's actually true, man. Let me tell you, I was talking to a buddy of mine who's been building around here for a long time. He builds custom homes, and he's just a one guy operation. Sometimes he'll bring somebody on during the, like the rolling of the trusses or something of that nature. But for the most part, he builds these houses by himself. And, he hires subs for all the, electrical, plumbing, all the other stuff, but he frames them up. And so he knows the game. You call up, you talk to the electrician, you say, "Hey, man, I'm going to need, somebody to come out and wire this, remodel or whatever it is you got going on." And he told me, he says, "I haven't heard this one in a while." And he says, "Great, I'll have an electrician out there in the next few hours." And like he was like, "Oh, wait a minute, no, next week. I'm not ready yet." Yeah, it was just like, but he had somebody like essentially ready to send out there right now. And I'm thinking, "Oh man, that is not a good sign." Like if you said, "Oh man, I can have somebody out there to maybe tomorrow or whatever," but if he says, "No, I can have somebody out there right now," right? That's to me is just like, man, there's no work or lack of work happening to keep these guys busy. And so that's another telling sign of the situation we face right now. When that turns, right? Because it will at some point. Like it may get worse. I mean, who knows, right? Anything's possible. And I'm not trying to say that it ain't gonna get worse. What I'm trying to say is that it's evidence to me that the boom is around the corner. Because if you raise that inflation expectation, which we have prevalent within the economy right now, while the Federal Reserve sits still, that will ease economic conditions. If that stays prevalent within the economy, we will find the accommodation will show up over time within the housing market itself. Now, will or will not happen, time will tell. But my predictions of what it is that the Federal Reserve has been doing, I think are more accurate than anybody else's, considering that everybody else seems to think that the Federal Reserve screwed up, don't know what they're doing, did it by accident. But in my opinion, from everything that I've read inside of their speeches, including the deliberate declaration of transitory inflation, like it was just like that to me is still being used in their favor. Because every time somebody says it, it's just like they're transitory inflation. They were wrong about that. And I'm thinking, yeah, and it pushed the inflation expectation higher and it eased economic conditions. And you could see that evident within the spiking within the housing market and the massive inflationary scenario that we got from it. Right? Or the stimulus package essentially we got from it. It wasn't until the inflation fell away and the Fed started lowering rates that the economy started slowing down. See, this is what's crazy about it. When you start to look at it almost counterintuitive to what you think it should be, and it feels so wrong to do it because we've all been raised by the movies and TV shows and teachers and schools and whatever parents, but it's the Federal Reserve who said it best, right? When you raise or when you lower the inflation expectation, you will raise the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus, making the downturn worse and reducing inflation even more. Now, that's not me who said that. Like, I mean, it's me who just said it, but it's not me. That was John Williams from Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. Now, again, that's kind of like when you hear it, it's so hard to kind of wrap your head around what it is that he said. But think about it. When you lower the inflation expectations, so your expectations just disappear, the expectations are falling. You will raise the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus, right? Because the real interest rates are rising. See, most people see it like, okay, when the Fed lowers rates, that stimulates the economy. When they raise rates, that restricts the economy. But what you really have to think about is not the nominal rates, but the real interest rates. And so if the real interest rates fall, that stimulates the economy. If the real interest rates rise, that restricts the economy. The Fed doesn't necessarily have to move. The inflation expectations do. So in this scenario, when most people are like, okay, well, the Fed lowers rates when we have lower interest rates, that stimulates the economy. When the Fed raises rates, that restricts the economy. Now, when you think about it from the real interest rate point of view, the Fed doesn't move in this scenario, and the expectations does. So again, when we hear John Williams say, when the inflation expectation falls, it further diminishes the degree of it raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus, making the downturn worse, right? Because when you diminish the degree of monetary stimulus because you raise the real interest rates, you make the downturn worse and it reduces inflation even more. To understand that is is hard. I get it, right? Like it took me years of like researching the Fed to try and like, wrap my head around what the hell he was trying to say there. But once you get it, it makes a lot of sense. If you lower the inflation expectation, you raise the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus and making the downturn worse. So think about it opposite of that. If you raise the inflation expectation, you will lower the real interest rates, increasing the degree of monetary stimulus, making the downturn unlikely, right? And increasing inflation even more. This is how you stimulate the economy, is you hold the Fed funds rate still and you increase the inflation expectations. Now, if you have a Federal Reserve who is committed to getting to a 2% target, you should at least have some evidence of them achieving a 2% target in the past, which has never happened. Not once. They have ran close, persistently under or over, but never at 2%. Passing by it briefly, moment like, whoop, there goes 2%. Yeah, whoop, there one again. Going up or down, one way or the other, but never ever achieving a 2% target. Now, how in the world are they going to do that? If they couldn't do it in the past, they can't hold inflation at any position, no matter what, right? Whether it was 2 or 2.1 or 3 or 5, it doesn't matter. Inflation constantly moves around. So there's no way you'll be able to achieve a 2% target, not by their own metrics, not by their own abilities, and not by their history. So what is it that they're really attempting to do? Get to 2%. The getting to 2% is the goal. Not being there, getting there, the path to there. As long as you are in a constant state of attempting to be at 2%, but never quite getting there, that's the monetary policy right there. They will never be at 2% because they can't get there. They never have, never will, can't do it. But if they are always in an attempt to get there, now they have the ability to ease or tighten financial conditions based on the inflation expectations and the Federal Reserve's position on the Fed funds rate. I will explain this stuff over and over again. I'm the only one who's going to do it for you guys. There's nobody else who's doing it. They all get close. They can all touch in on certain parts of it. And so it's nice to see that it is like some confirmation of a lot of the things I say. But to be honest, nobody has put it together the way that I feel that I have. And most of it is because it's some sort of like argument that the Federal Reserve screwed up. And to me, I think the Federal Reserve absolutely nailed it in every way. Think about it. They're like, even their own words, they say it right now. The Fed is in a good spot. No, it sucks for us, but that's not, they already told us it was going to be a burden for you. We talked about that last night in yesterday's video. How Powell like straight up admitted it was just like, man, if we don't do something, it's going to be a burden for those at the end of the line. And if we do something, causes inflation, it's going to be a burden for the people at the end of the line. So guess what? The people at the end of the line were guaranteed to be faced the burden. And the people who are closest to the end of the line were going to face the burden next. And so on up until eventually you got to the wedge of inequality where the top 20% were actually screaming higher, going, man, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced in my entire life, just sitting around watching the asset growth like crazy. And this is the economy we now live in because the people themselves don't consume as much as the people at the top, the 20% do. Man, I've rambled on for 30 minutes. Thank you so much for listening. The point being of this video is to pay attention to the lumber supply that's out there. Once it becomes obvious that there is a crisis scenario with the shortages that we will face going into the future when it comes to building new construction, it's not necessarily the cost of the lumber itself, which will go up. It will be the availability driving the price of the home up due to the lag period that it will take in order to acquire that lumber. You know, the longer this goes on before it gets, to the point of a turnaround where the supply can then start meeting the demand, the worse it'll be. And evidence of it, of a scenario such as that can take place has not only take place here in the United States during COVID, but there's evidence of it now taking place within places like Belize. And it's not necessarily because it's not the same industry. It's a completely different industry. Like what they're going through has nothing to do with what the United States is experiencing. Point being is that the symptoms that they are facing within their industry are showing up here in the United States, and mainly it's their desperate need for material that they are searching anywhere for because it's unavailable right now. That's what we're seeing here in the United States as supply from the West Coast is being pushed out to the East Coast. All right. They're new Keynesians. They really are the new Keynesian model. Which, once you kind of understand the new Keynesian model, which is kind of, I, I don't know how to put it. Like, I don't know if it's just overly complicated political or whatever. It's just like, to me, when I think about like how it is that George Bush says, well, we're all Keynesians now. And I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute, man. The whole idea behind that kind of model is that you only plan things for like 100 years. Right? Because if you ask, well, what are you going to do after 100 years? It doesn't matter. Everybody will be dead. Like, we'll make a decision right now that will last at least 100 years. And then after 100 years, they're like, we don't know what we're going to do after that. Because if you plan it for 100 years from right now, it doesn't really matter what happens because whatever decision you make, everybody who was involved in that will be gone. And that's scary to think about. Like, that's what is in the mentality of that. Yeah. Most lumber I see is not dry and twisted. Most lumber I see is like, well, we buy premium grade, so it's always usually pretty decent. And if we can get it. The premium grades it's like getting very hard to find them. Yep, it's not that complicated, but people don't understand it. It will. The problem that I think a lot of us is that we're victim of our circumstances, in which that we can only learn from what it is that we were taught. See, here's something that I think is very interesting. I'm learning a lot about leadership when it comes to just literally being in a position of leadership, even if you didn't even realize you were doing it, right? Now, I've done a lot of stuff where I felt like, okay, like it's obvious that you have to lead this, right? You're, foreman of this, crew. You're in charge of, dispatching these, whatever, these orders. There's been positions in which that it was obvious, right? You just take on these leadership roles. But then what I realized for a lot of people out there is that they turn themselves into follower roles. even though they have guided themselves to the experience of what it is that they are looking for, once they get there, they literally are expected to be guided. Like they cannot lead themselves through anything in life as simple as just like taking 100% control of what it is that you are doing. Now, I'm going to give you an example of this. Is like I'm trying to think of it in more on a subconscious level, but let me give you an example because I work at a retail store, right? And now people all the like this, the store's full of stuff, right? It's all over the place. And people ask all the time, hey man, where is, right? Because you can't, how can you possibly know where everything's at? Now, as a customer, right? No problem. So a customer asked me for a particular item. Now I say, sure, let me show you where they're at. So I start walking, it's a little ways down, take this aisle, go down to the very end of the aisle. I grab the product off the shelf. Now, the customer met me at the counter. I walked away from the counter. He followed me away from the counter. We walked all the way down to where this product was. I grabbed the product off the shelf, and one of my little sales trick is I always put the product right into their hand. Here you go, right? Because once people have taken possession of it, it's like they don't want to let it go. So like they look at it, they're like, yeah, they play with it, or yeah, mess with it. Yep, good, okay. Now I say to him, or he says, yes, great, I'll take it, and I'm like, okay. And now the aisles in our store, I mean, they're wide enough, but they're not that wide. And he's kind of standing like right in the middle of the aisle. And, counters that way. I like we got to go over there to the till. And so I'm essentially waiting for him to, start walking back towards the tills, back towards the counter. And he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, I'll take it, and he's like still agreeing and he's not moving, right? He's just sitting there. So I'm like, okay, no problem. And so I kind of like, skinny it up and then kind of slide past him, get between him and in the shelf and, get past him and then walk back up to the counter. And so, very nice, thank you very much. Okay, have a great morning. And he walks off. And so I'm thinking that for a second. I'm like, why wouldn't he walk back to the counter? Like, why didn't he just take the initiative and just start making like effort to go to the next process, right? Like, we can't do it here. I mean, I can't take your money at where we're standing. You don't want anything else. You got what you need. What's going on next? And I realized he was focused in on his I came here to get this. I asked you. Now you're showing me. Now he is in a following position. Before, he led himself to the store. He got that far. But once he got there, he asked me to start taking control of everything that he had going on there. So once I had like in that position and he was in the follower position, he didn't want to exit out of it. He's still the follower, waiting to follow. Didn't I mean, he may not even realize he was doing it. It may have been a subconscious thing. I'm sitting there trying to think like, dude, snap out of it. Like, not really, like I'm not rude or anything like that about it, but I'm thinking he's just sitting there looking at his product, like not realizing what to do. And I'm like, okay, well, I know what to do. I'm going to walk back to the counter and sell you the stuff. Right. And so as I kind of like sneak past him, whatever, he turns and follows and we go through it. So I thought, well, okay, I wonder how often this really happens. Like, how often do we find ourselves like automatically put ourselves into a follower or leadership role, not necessarily realizing that's what we are doing, or the people that we are dealing with expecting us to be in that follower or leadership role, considering the interaction that's happening at the time? Now, I became aware of it at that moment, especially more aware of it after he left, and I was thinking about the situation. Well, today, I had another situation come up that was very similar, right? Again, guy comes in, he was just like, hey man, do you have, this particular item? So I sure do. Let me show you where they're at. Now, I walk up to him, right? And they're hanging on a peg. And this particular item, they're like these little metal, I don't want to talk about it too much into detail, but it's just a little metal product that's sitting there, and if you were to like hit it, it would rattle in the package, right? So, and that's exactly what I did. So as I walked past him, these things that he was looking for, I tapped the peg that they were hitting on, so they kind of rattled. So he would see, oh yeah, that's where they're at. You would hear the sound; it would be very distinctive. So I kind of tapped him. I'm like, all right, bud. All right. And I just kind of hit him there and I was just casually doing it. And I was just going to keep right on walking. Well, as I turn around just to kind of look back at him, he's like almost on my heels. And I'm like, you missed him. Right. Like they're right there. I tapped him right there. You heard it. Like I know you did, you know? And he was like, oh, yeah. Okay. Thanks. But like I didn't really necessarily slow down and he was following me and because I continued past him, he was going to continue following me because he was in that following role. Now, again, subconsciously, he may not even realize he had done it because he knew he was going for those things. And why he stepped past him and kept going, like I was going to show him something else, is because I think he just honestly thought, I'm following. He's leading. Let's go. Right. And then he never really thought like anything differently until it was like, what am I doing? And then he went and led himself into where it is that he was going and then picked up the item and then came back to the counter. So I honestly think that this is probably happening more on a daily basis with the people out there than they would ever have given a consideration for. Right? Like I see how these people were accidentally doing it with these small items on a subconscious level. Can you imagine what it must be like, you know, in a manipulated society, you know, conscious driven or whatever. Like, I don't know how to quite explain it, but like, what do they call that? What was another like example of this happening? Like social adherence or compliance or whatever. Like one day I had shown up for work and there was a big semi parked in our parking lot, or where we were parking at the time. There's a big medical facility across the street. Before it was that facility, there was like a freight company, and then the freight company had shut down, so there nobody was there, and we were parking in their parking lot. And there was a big semi that had pulled into that parking lot first thing in the morning. So when we showed up, we couldn't park in the park. Well, I couldn't. I was the first one there, and so I parked on the other side of the street. Well, after I got out of my truck and went into the store, he left, right? Like almost immediately. So the parking lot was opened up. But when people started showing up for work, they saw that I hadn't parked in the parking lot. And so they all found different places to park and nobody else parked in that parking lot, assuming because nobody else had done it that they weren't allowed to do it. So they didn't park in the parking lot, even though they totally could have done it. And the only reason why I didn't do it is because I couldn't, because there was a truck in my way. And now these are the type of things that I feel is taking place a lot out there inside of the world, inside of people's behaviors. And it's probably very difficult to recognize when it's happening, like this social conformity to things that you just assumed to be the case. Right? Or accidentally being in a following position, not even realize you were doing it, like walking right past the items that you wanted, not knowing what to do for the next step, right? As far as like progressing through the next stage of what it is that needs to be done. These are simple things that are happening out there, and I find examples of them happening almost daily out there, and I think to myself, man, I wonder how much of this occurs to me. Yeah, like I mean, you don't know it until you recognize it or become aware of it. So until you become aware of it, essentially, you just don't know, and you could be victim to all kinds of stuff like this. I'm expecting people to start moving to central states for the price, comfortable living. Um, my AC company is higher, says their average tech gets $37 an hour. They can't find anyone to hire. Nebraska gas, 2.7 unemployment rate is high paying jobs. I can't work for less than 54 ever. What is that? I can't work for less than 54 ever. Hmm. That's kind of funny because, like, I think about it, it was just like I do. many jobs where I don't get paid that much an hour. But then again, I think about how many hours I work in a day. And if I was to put that into an 8 hour equivalent, then, I guess it would be that much. Like, I don't know. I really don't know how many hours, like, I put in a day comparatively to how much I make. I don't know what that number is. I really don't. It's probably not that much, you know. But then again, if you're not keeping track, then what difference does it make? All right. I'm cooked. I lost my job. I'm cooked, and everything is fried proof. I need emergency care package. I usually charge 64. you know, not to like to push back against your situation or whatever. Losing your job is absolutely terrible, and I know that for me, when I lost my job in the past, that it would kind of freak me out a little bit in itself, and like, man, what am I going to do? Am I going to pay the bills? What, and all this stuff. And it's really bad during the time of it happening. And that stressful moment, that fear, that uncertainty, that doubt about the situation is it's hard to even, like, concentrate on anything else except for your problems that you're facing at that time. It makes it difficult to even do things like normal things, like, making coffee properly and stuff, because you're so stressed out about other things. There's never been a time in my life when something like that has happened, that after I got through it, that I did not find myself in such a better place. And I was so thankful because of where I was before to where I ended up, that if I hadn't faced it, then I would never have achieved the different step in my life that I needed to get. Right. And this is something that I think is like, it's hard again to even try and, like, say, hey man, we're not going to try and belittle the situation, but it's almost like embracing that situation in a way that says, okay, well, whatever punishment I'm about ready to receive here, I'm going to get the lessons of life that I need from this, because once I overcome it, those things that come up again isn't going to face me in that problem situation again, because I'm learning the lessons from it now. See, here's something I used to have, like, I don't know about necessarily like anger issues, but I guess it would be anger issues, right? Everybody kind of has them. I wouldn't get like violent, like hit people or anything like that. I've never been a fighter and anything like that, but I would always get very, like, upset with situations, and I would maybe yell or something of that nature. And a lot of times it was triggered by somebody else doing it. Like if they yelled, oh yeah, you want to yell, I can get real loud, right? And so it's like kind of understanding what it was that was happening during that got me to the point now that when it takes place, like that anger issue, somebody cuts you off, somebody yells at you, something's going on that is supposed to, like, deteriorate you into that low level vibration anger kind of feelings and stuff. When that stuff fires up, it's almost like a test. It's just like, you can feel it, like the tingling go ripping through you, and it's like, oh man, there it is. No, I'm gonna actually hold my cool during this, even though inside it's just ripping apart, right? But I'm gonna chill through this, right? Being tested on those things, that's where it's like, that you're about ready to receive the next step, is when you can handle those situations. Because if you're looking for something better in your life, like if you kind of screwed up your bills, like if you're in debt and whatever, and you can't, everything is, can't make the payments or whatever, and you got all these issues going on, and then in your head, you're thinking, man, I wish I had $1 million. I wish I had $1 million. And it was just like, well, do people who have like $1 million flowing in their life, do they worry about the power bill and making their credit card payments? Are they stressed about those things? I mean, if that is even a thing on their head, in their mind? Is that a thing for them? I had to tell that to my wife. It was just like, okay, I have this issue where, like, I got whatever crap going on. I need to talk to, somebody about, like, this financing thing, this thing going on with these taxes, these write-offs, whatever I have. I said, I don't get it. Like, there's something going on here. I need to figure this part out. And it had been stressing me out. In the moment that I was just like, embraced the idea, it was just like, okay, I want to talk to a professional about this just to get some advice on what it is that I'm not doing right here. Because, like, you obviously don't know what the hell you're doing here. When I talk to that person immediately, right, all the relief of everything that I have been feeling just vanishes. And I come to the understanding and was just like, well, wait a minute here. I want to be in $1 million energy, right? Like $1 million a year making energy, whatever that's supposed to be for anybody out there. I don't know what it is that your goals and your mindset is, but to be in that $1 million energy, the last thing I think that the individual who is in that energy would be worrying about is some of these little things that I've been trying to deal with, which are very minor. That's like the last thing that would be on their mind. But yet here it is, I'm dealing with these things. And it was just like, now I talk to this person, I'm like, here, you deal with this. And they're like, yeah, totally, I'll deal with it. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Now I can go back to focusing on what I need to do in order to make my goals happen. And I'm like, oh, perfect. That's how it works, right? Because those people aren't sitting around wondering what it is that they need to do with these things. They know what they're doing. They're like, here, take care of this. Go figure it out, man. That's why I hired you. And so once you kind of embrace that kind of feeling, it was just like, okay, what is it that is next for me? Why is it this occurring? Somebody very close to me, in fact, I'll tell the story. It was Sarah, right? She essentially got fired from her last job. And now I'm sure she probably doesn't want me talking about it, but whatever. It happened. It wasn't a good fit. She went to go to work at the school doing something that she never in a million years thought that she would be qualified for, and she absolutely loves it. The school loves it. I mean, all the kids love her. She is just like, this is like my dream job, she tells me. And her entire life she's been in the service industry, like serving beers and burgers, right? And that is essentially what she had done, for all our lives. I mean, I met her when she was working at a pizza parlor, and that's essentially what she had done her entire life. She takes that job working at the school, and all of a sudden, man, here she is. She's got like this, awesome experience for what essentially is going to be like, the finishing out of her career for her work experience. That would never have happened had she not had the experience at the other place, which wasn't a good fit, right? Losing, like, when she lost that job, it hit her hard. It was like she felt she took it personally. She was like, what am I going to do? There's all this stuff. And then essentially it wasn't, but just a few weeks later, she fell into what it is that is essentially her dream job, right? And that she didn't even know exist. She didn't even know it. She never would have gone and like asked for this, thinking that she would have been qualified for it. And that's what's cool about it. It was like, she was like, holy crap, I didn't like, here she is going and like studying to get a degree in teaching now. So it's like right on. None of that would have happened had she not experienced that initial, like, whatever, termination. And that happens with everything. Everything in life is like that. It's not just jobs, it's, relationships with people, it's, experiences with, even like, the neighborhoods that you grow up in. Those things change, and eventually, the energy of which it is that you had grown up in there is not the same as the one that is now existing. You find another place to be, you know, you move on to other areas. What are we talking about again? Lumber? All right. If you use the dollar in any capacity, you're using debt. Yeah, yeah. As far as driving is concerned, it's amazing how many people will tailgate and aggressively fixate on the car directly in front of them, but then blind to every opportunity to ever pass in the slow car. Yeah, see, this is really what's weird about, like, here where I live, I have what is essentially Highway 30, which is probably one of the most dangerous highways anywhere. Like, there's more accidents and deaths and craziness that happens on this little stretch of highway going into Astoria, and it is just terrible. Why it is that people will pass, and I see it almost every day when I drive on this thing, why they pass on this highway is beyond me. Because there's nowhere that you could ever possibly go to in enough time to, like, you are not going to be able to, like, beat any kind of clock, any kind of time by passing people, because we all end up at Safeway, the grocery store where there's a stoplight, at the same time. Like, I will have people pass me. I'll see them pass the car in front, and then I won't see them again. And it'll be like, well, they're gone, right? And then when we all come into town, there's a stoplight, and there they are. So they took their life, the car, my life, the next car in front. They took everybody's lives because this is one of the most dangerous highways out there in order to be like that much quicker to work. And we're all in the same place at the same time. There's no point in passing. There's literally no point in passing. Like, you might, maybe save 1 minute. And like, if you're that late, dude, man, don't take everybody's life in your hands like that. It's crazy. I'm thinking about getting a CDL in 10 to 15 years to get paid to travel. Yeah, I don't know if a CDL is, well, I mean, there's probably going to be still some CDL drivers out there, but you think about it, they're building autonomous cars now. So, like, trucks will be driving themselves. They already are, right? I'm super excited, but maybe I should avoid Astoria. Yeah, I don't know what you're gonna do. I mean, obviously there's stuff to try, but I don't know what you would do, like, as far as like trucking in Astoria goes. Yeah. All right, are we good? 56 minutes into this. I just wanted to keep sharing about what I'm experiencing within lumber because I think it's just so telling. There is definite shortage that's starting to happen, and like I said, every day I'm having another vendor telling me something that is, you know, somewhat of a detail that is, building up of what it is that I have been suspicious of this entire time. Like, every time I talk to a different vendor, it's something else that's coming up, whether it's studs. The last one was a treated guy. He was talking about 6x material coming up in short supply. There's all these issues that are surfacing, but isn't really necessarily noticeable. And I think that's really what I want to share with the people is just like, man, I am finding this, and I know a lot of it is anecdotal, but it's happening. You Nobody is explaining this stuff to me except UE. Thank you, AI educator. Um, I don't know how many people actually see it the way I do, because I don't know. I think it's really just the way that I learned about monetary policy. And this is something that I was explaining yesterday. I had thought about this. Most people, when they go to learn monetary policy, they had gone to like school and got like a degree in economics, or, took a class in it or something. And therefore, they were educated in monetary policy, educated in Federal Reserve, educated in all this stuff. And so somebody taught them how to think about it. Very much, they were led. Well, I didn't do that. Like, I read these speeches for myself. And so when I started learning about the monetary policy, I was learning it from the monetary policy makers themselves, not from a class and not from a professor and not really from other economists out there. Although I did learn a lot about the economy and the Federal Reserve through Peter Schiff. What I learned about monetary policy itself, I learned from the Federal Reserve. Um, and so when I listen to other people talk about monetary policy, I'm thinking they're not, like, that's not right. That's not right what they're talking about. They get it close. Say goodbye to the dot plot. Say goodbye to the forward guidance to the market. Big shots. That was a fascinating Fed speech today. The press conference. They will make driving yourself around illegal probably in the next 5 years. I bought a little West Fraser timber just because, brother, zero expectations. So appreciative that you come and share in every level. Yeah. Oh, the dice. Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, we'll put the dice up before we call it quits. There's my glasses. Yeah, you bet, guys. I mean, do what you want with the information. I'm trying to really like help people out when it comes to their projects, when it comes to the lumber demand side of things. Um, if you're looking at it from the asset holder kind of position, like you want to try and make some money off of it, you're on your own. But really, what I'm trying to share with the people is those who are, you know, for their business or whatever they got going on. I think about it when you're in a position in which that you have information that is generally shared with other blue collar workers, that information can be very helpful and useful to each other. I gather all this information from all these blue collar workers, and then people use it to make money with. Uh, My intent here is to try and help blue collar people. Right? Like if you're white collar too or whatever, I mean, just the average working person. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're actually doing as long as is it's the people who are struggling there to try and figure out how it is that they're going to get out of the other side of the wedge. I gather their information. I go and I talk to them. Their boots on the ground. They are seeing it in real time. I'm gathering that information, talking to them. I deliver it here on YouTube, and a lot of people want to take that information and go and make money with it. That's cool. What you do with the information and what I'm intending to do with the information, I don't know if those are the same things. I know a lot of people. I had hedge funds get a hold of me saying thank you. George Gammon actually mentioned it to me too. He says, "Man, there are people who listen to you," and I thought, "Man, that is credible. Thank you for inviting me to the Rebel Capitalist. Thank you for everything you've ever, done for me and offered for me and stuff." When I think about the information that I share here on this channel and how it is that I acquired it and who is it that is benefiting the most. Because the people who have come to me and said, "Man, thank you so much for this information," are the followers of this channel who have shown their appreciation for it. And then I got a lot of people who come to me and say, "Man, you've saved me or made me a lot of money." Isn't that weird? So I look at this stuff and I look at what it is that I have been sharing here so that people can then look at their own position and think to themselves, "Man, I can understand this macroeconomic stuff in a way that I can now recognize my customers, my clientele, why it is that they're changing, the shifts that are changing within it, the dynamics that are changing in my area." And I'm starting to recognize it through the Cantillon effect or Gresham's law or the bullwhip effect or something of this nature. When these start to occur and you start to realize, man, this channel is not just about making money. It's about understanding how it is that you are going to conduct yourself in the presence of the economic forces that are playing out. Some people want to make money with it. Other people, they just want to be able to make it through the day. Right? It's the same information. Uh, so is it inevitable that the only outcome is hyperinflation? No. In fact, I'm not even sure if hyperinflation is a real possibility considering what it is that we got going on with the dollar. Right? And it's easy to explain the hyperinflationary scenario. Just look at Zimbabwe. Right? Look at the Weimar Republic, Venezuela. And you can just say, like, just look at these nations that have experienced it, and it's all from this out of control money printing. Okay. Those nations didn't hold a world reserve currency. And those nations didn't have entities around the globe writing debts that were due in their currency. Not in the local currency, in that foreign currency that went into hyperinflation. See, this is where the United States stands different from all these other nations that had gone into hyperinflation, is that nations, entities, individuals, banks, who knows, right? they all write debts that are due in dollars. When they write debts that are due in dollars, those debts are due in dollars that have nothing to do with the United States except that the Fed has to provide the liquidity because the demand for dollars will grow so much it will destroy the economy. So it is forced, the Federal Reserve is forced to provide liquidity in high liquidity demand scenarios. How do they do that? That's very difficult. So, as the nations around the world are writing debts that are due in US dollars, again, it doesn't have anything to do with the United States, and we could say, oh, let them default on it. That drives the value of the dollar through the roof, which again destroys our economy. So, it's very important that the liquidity that they demand is there for them to acquire it, to make sure that these debts don't go into default or go skyrocketing, because there's a secondary effect that starts dominoing that will be even more devastating than letting those things default, and that is to watch the credit default swap scenario kick in. Now, to understand this situation, you're going to look at it and go like, man, I don't think the Fed could print at a pace that is fast enough to even cover all those debts. Like, the Federal Reserve could not possibly print at a pace that is fast enough to cover all those dollar denominated debts that are out there. What would they buy? Like right now, they buy U.S. Treasuries. There's not enough U.S. Treasuries to buy in order to provide the liquidity to pay off all those dollar denominated debts. So even right now, it's like even if the Federal Reserve was like, I mean, obviously they can destroy the currency all they want, and there's many times that they attempt to do that, but that's not what they were attempting to do, is to do it on purpose. What they were attempting to do is to provide the liquidity to the dollar demand out there. And that dollar demand is huge. It's massive. It's much bigger than anybody would ever thought. Yeah. So I have no expectations of dollars going into hyperinflation. It's just not. That's not a real thing. Very true, Simon. Do you know the milkshake theory? Absolutely. Brent, I've had conversations. I met Brent Johnson personally. At the Rebel Capitalist. I've met him a few times. Um, he actually has a very outstanding presentation. I don't know if he's still doing it this way because the last time I saw it was 2 years ago. But Brent Johnson does this wonderful presentation where he takes his dollar milkshake theory and completely disassembles it and like discredits his theory, like just smashes it, right? And then he goes right back over all the evidence again and then just confirms everything about the dollar milkshake theory. It is so good the way he does it because he's basically taken every single person's argument and like explaining their argument better than they could, and then disassembles their argument and proves his case. It's so good. It's one of the better ways that I have seen a presentation done, because most people just deliver information, but really his whole first half of his presentation is literally like pushing against his own idea, right? Using other people's arguments, explaining their argument better than they could, and then just totally like basically going through a debate, and then outstanding like performance at the end of it, just really proving the whole idea. And that's something that I've listened to quite a bit, and that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with the idea of the dollar milkshake theory. But really, what ended up happening is just like everything else I do out there. I'm a researcher from from the point of view of the policymaker. Most people are the researcher from the point of view of like the investor. If you are doing research as the investor point of view, you're going to look for reasons for dollar movements and where it is that you can place money and stuff like that. If another politician or whatever, if you have all these different energies in which it is that you are carrying when you are doing the research, then you are going to then view it in that fashion. I looked at this from the view of the policymaker. That's why my stuff sounds so weird. It sounds like I'm in favor of the Federal Reserve for a lot of people. Like they think, dude, you're on their side or something. And I'm like, I'm not on their side. I'm viewing it from their view, and I'm explaining it from their view. And that's the difference inside of it. So it's important for people to like listen to many different arguments and many different ways of viewing the economy and how it operates. Like, if it wasn't for Brent Johnson's dollar milkshake theory, I never would have gone and found dollar funding stresses in China, which is essentially describing a lot of the details that Brent Johnson talks about. But it's a Federal Reserve document talking about how it is that during times of dollar funding stresses, the issues that a lot of nations will be facing because of their dollar denominated debt. And there's an entire document by the Federal Reserve called Dollar Funding Stresses in China. We broke that down on a members only live stream. I think we've done it a couple of times. And it's a pretty good one. It's really boring as hell, but there's really good stuff in there that are very like telling of how much demand for dollar exists outside of the United States, especially in times of stress. Nobody notices it until the demand picks up. Once the liquidity dries up, then everybody notices how much dollar demand really exists out there. You guys having fun? Are we done? Hour and 10 minutes into it. If you want to keep going, hit the like button. We got 46 likes right now, 47 likes, 80 people watching. If you get it up to like, I don't know, 60 likes in the next 5 minutes, let's say we get 13 likes in the next 5 minutes, we'll stick around for a little longer. All right. You speak clearly to me 100% of the time, 60% of the time. I took I I look at money as a question mark, and that's how I got where I am. Simon literally goes to the source for this info. Book authors, Jekyll Island, Milkshake Theory, author, Cantillon, original writing, Fed speeches, etc. And well, here's the thing, like a lot of times I will have somebody say, well, what about this guy's theory? Or what about that guy's theory? And I'll go and I'll listen to them, and it ends up being something of political mindsets. And the moment that I hear, like, oh, the reason why this is happening is because, back in the Obama administration, their, failed policies and all this other stuff caused it. I'm like, you're not getting down to the root of it. Like, if you could explain, like, Cantillon effect inside of that as the symptoms of it, like like all these political actions that these people are taking, these are symptoms of the underlying economic forces that are playing out. So it's okay to recognize those symptoms and say, hey, man, these are causing some major problems here and they're evident. But then to say these are the causes of the economy, as opposed to recognizing those things as symptoms of the underlying economic forces that are now playing out, I think that's really where the difference is in a lot of people's like theories, right? So once I hear them like kind of moving into politics, and I'm like, if you start moving into politics, you're moving away from underlying economic forces. So it's okay to recognize the politics of it, but in my opinion, those politics have to be recognized as symptoms to the underlying economic forces that are playing out. Because if you can find evidence, like I said from Cantillon's essay, right? You can find evidence within his essay that says, man, if you raise your standard of living, you will cause the prices to move up and foreign production is going to come in and domestic manufacturers are going to leave. That was written down hundreds of years ago from a guy who was witnessing this happening from hundreds of years before that. If you raise your standard of living, the prices will move up, foreign competition will come in, and domestic manufacturers will leave. That's exactly what happened here in the United States. It will happen in other nations. It's not political, as much as people want to believe it.
Made you some tea.
Did you? Oh, right on. You guys are so awesome. You
Yeah.
guys really know how to take care of me. Thank you, sir.
It's no ice cube, so.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's hot. It's really hot. Ow. Man, you're so good to me. So, anyway. Ow. Dang. All right. Yes, Simon. In a way, I would say politics is a symptom of what politics started a long time ago by increasing the money supply. Yeah. Okay. Well, deplorable. I'm going to give you the ability to Own it for yourself, right? That's your economy. That's how you're going to look at it, and that's how you're going to believe it. And if that's the way you want to view it, then go ahead and look at the politics of it being the reasonings that we have this endless money supply, as opposed to understanding that there is economic forces that are playing out that have now led us to this location that we are in today. And so to understand the underlying economic forces that are playing out is one to say everything as far as the money printer goes is a symptom. And to focus in on it is going to be a waste of time. Like, man, I got a headache. I got a headache. I got a headache. And I was just like, why do you have a headache? It was just like, because I haven't taken any aspirin. And I was just like, that's not really what's going on here, right? There's something causing the headache. What is it? And I was just like, if we just took the aspirin, we won't have to worry about it anymore. Which one is it? Are we talking about the symptom, the headache? Or are we talking about the problem? What's going on there? Like, there's a lot of reasons there's this headache here. Are you diseased? Right? Did you fall down? Have you drank water? Right? I mean, there's so many different things, that it could possibly be. But if you take an aspirin, you can cover it all up and say, nah, it doesn't exist. So, you want to complain about the headache? Or should we figure out what the force is going on there? Uh, there's some truth to that since '08. Uh, there are pillars of knowledge and then spins on these pillars. It takes a discerning, experienced, and educated mind to discerning or disseminate. I should put my glasses on. There we go. Between the spin and truth. No spin zone on this channel. Well, I mean, and again, I would like to think that that would be the case, right? That I'm not trying to spin it, not trying to push any kind of particular agenda, not trying to, you know, convince anybody of any political mindset. I mean, whatever it is that you want to believe, I would really like to think that people should be able to believe whatever it is that they truly want to. What I'm starting to recognize from the things that I have studied and the conversations that I've had is that once you see the underlying economic forces, then you're going to start recognizing that you own your position. And now, when people ask me questions, a lot of times this is really good because once you start opening your eyes to it, and then people start asking me questions about it, I literally can ask them the appropriate questions that they are looking for in order to get to the answers of what it is that they were seeking. Like they already have it in them. They don't realize it. And everybody has this, and it's so weird to think because it's happened to me now so many times where I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're headed down a particular path with their ideas of investment or starting a business or saving some money or doing these things, and then they start asking me these questions about the economy, and when they start asking me these questions, I'm almost asking questions back. And when we start to have this conversation, all of a sudden you can see like the aha moments are like clicking inside of their head. All of a sudden things are lighting up. And now it may not be like a full on explanation that they are like, oh, they walk away with this profound experience or something from it. But all of a sudden, like they realize, man, there is key moments inside of this understanding that they have missed. And then I can fill in the blanks in just a way that it all of a sudden connects these dots that they had never thought of before. And now it's starting to make sense to them why the things are occurring the way they are. And a lot of times it's just a few minutes of conversation that it takes. And I've had it so many times where people will literally walk away going, man, that was cool. Thanks. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Next. It was like it's fun. I don't even realize it's happening now. All right. Deplorable's trying to own the chat here. All right. There's oh, we already read that one. Five drink water. Okay. Here we go. Fed also told us they were independent and not political, yet they started messing around with fiscal policy and buying up real world assets. I can't blame anyone who doesn't believe the Fed. Oh, that's fine. That's cool. I mean, again, it's your own belief system that does that. But what real world assets outside of US Treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, SDRs, gold, what other real world assets is the Federal Reserve putting on their balance sheet? Like, I understand that they like can loan money to banks who have bought in stocks and used the stocks as collateral, and in a roundabout way, proxy way, they're using the big banks to buy stocks. And okay, there's that. But outside of that, like, what is it that they are exactly buying as far as real world assets that they put on their balance sheet? Outside of US Treasuries, mortgage backed securities, gold, SDRs, few other little, like, what is it? There's no other assets that they're putting on their balance sheet. They're all US Treasuries. So they're not buying up real world assets. I don't know where people say that. Now, if you're talking about the big banks in conjunction, like they're lending those big banks money using those real world assets as collateral in order to do it, okay. Yeah, we can keep going into that direction. And then this is the central banking system. And in a lot of ways, yeah, I guess you could probably look at that as political and manipulative and all that. And it very much is. But then again, we are accepting this. We choose to volunteer every single day to use the dollar. And if we are not smart enough to figure out that there is other ways of going about using a currency that is not that of the Federal Reserve note, that's our problem. Like, that's not their problem. That's our problem. We want to blame them for our problem. Our problem is that we are using their currency. We don't have to. It's completely voluntary. 100%. Jesus, that's hot. All right. My understanding of a genius is just a guy that can connect a few more dots than the average Joe. Well, thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. I never really considered myself as far as like an intelligent person when I was in school. Like, I did terrible in school. I barely graduated high school. I kind of cheated my way through it to get my diploma, but I just wanted out. I wanted to get a job and just be done with it and move on with my life. And so, like, the idea of even having a high school diploma was not that even that important to me. There was a time when I was young that the school was recognized and the teachers were recognizing and parents were recognizing, like, man, there is something going on. This kid is not learning at the same pace as everybody else is. And a lot of it had to do with reading comprehension. Like, I literally would read sentences and have no idea what the hell that I could not remember what I read. I would go back and read it and remember that I had read that, but I couldn't like retain anything that I was reading. And I mean, it was bad, really bad. And I suffered with that pretty much my entire time that I was in school, that I could not hold on to anything that I would read. I would sit there and just look at something and my mind would just spin off on all kinds of other things as my eyes were glancing over the words, but it wasn't, nothing was staying in there. That was a problem that I had faced. Now, when I was young, I was essentially taken to the university up here at, Oregon State University to go and take these, tests or whatever to figure out where it is that my disabilities were lying. And the people up there who had performed the test were absolutely shocked at the problem solving capabilities that I was doing. Like, they were saying, Jesus, man, this kid is like, I'm putting puzzles together. I'm doing all these little games and stuff because I loved mind games. I mean, I love the little puzzle mind games and stuff, try to work on that. Those things, I mean, I've always loved those. And they had a series of tests of those kind of things for me. And I thought that that was just the funnest part of the whole weekend of going through this stuff. So at the end of it, that's what they had essentially determined. It was just like, okay, so his reading comprehension is essentially non-existent, and he has the problem-solving capabilities close to genius level. So this was like my existence, right? I would go to school and I couldn't retain, like, it was sucked. I couldn't do anything in there. Wood shop was awesome. I loved wood shop, right? It was the greatest, the shop classes, all that other stuff, because it was hands on. Got to go and play around and mess around with that stuff. It was great. But anything that I had to like retain and learn and then regurgitate later, especially if it was something that I was not interested in, was almost an impossible task. It was not going to happen for me. As time went on, like even the start of this channel, you can go back and watch the videos of me reading on this channel, and it is embarrassing as hell. But whatever, that's just, the way it is. So I just accept that too. But I stuttered a lot, and it was very difficult to even read and retain a lot of the stuff that I was trying to get in at the beginning of this channel and starting the channel up. So here, as time has gone on over the course of now, geez, it's almost 9 years. Yeah, in November it will be 9 years I've been doing this channel. I'm just amazed. Like now, reading seems so easy to me, and it was such a difficult task before. I powered through so many of these speeches, reading them over and over again, going through, so many documents, reading so many articles, constantly doing it. I just kind of pushed past, you know, the disabilities, whatever it was. I don't even know if it was like that's what they called it. I don't know what it was, right? Just probably pure laziness. But, being able to finally push past all that stuff, I don't read books. Like a book, a novel, like a book. No, if it's anything longer than 10 minutes, oh man, it's going to be a difficult one. Like you guys hear when I'm almost done with the speeches, by the time I'm doing like a 40-minute speech, it's like I can barely get the words out by the end of it. It's just like I'm mumbling them out. I am just like, I've had it. It's just like, it's so hard. It's getting easier, but that's still the case. Like even now, it's just like if I go more than 10 minutes, I'm going to start finding my mind wandering and, all the, issues that I've always had. But I recognize it, set it down, come back, do it again. Anyway, moving on. That's me. $5. Thank you so much, Rod. I really appreciate the support, man. If the birth rate drops and population decreases, what happens to housing prices? Yeah, but that's a question that you have to also ask in relation to immigration, right? I mean, you talking zero immigration at the time too? I mean, that's probably not going to be the case. If you have a drop in population, then most likely you're going to find at some point that border getting opened up and an injection of a bunch of people come moving in, like a whole influx of them. You can see it kind of happening around the world at times. Why did they let all these people into this country? They just open up the borders and then let them in. And they don't give any kind of real reason for it. It's just kind of fix their population issue. So, you know, obviously, if people die off, then there's going to be a problem with the housing market there. But I don't think it's going to end up working out as simply as that for people. Um, you know, the idea of the United States changing the birth rate, like I don't think that's a real thing. I don't think that's going to be possible. Like, there's no nation that's been able to successfully really do it, right? Like, have a drop in birth rate, keep a high standard of living, and then increase the birth rate. I don't know if that's a real thing. I don't think that's possible. I mean, Cantillon describes it opposite of that. Like, it doesn't work like that. If you have a nation in which all the peasants and laborers are accustomed to eating meat and drinking wine and drinking beer and having nice clothing and stuff, it can't support a lot of inhabitants, so you're not going to have a lot of people there, especially kids. It's the places where they don't have any of that. The people who live cheapest off the land, they're the ones who can have the most kids. So when I think about like what is it going to do for housing prices, well, there's a whole lot of other questions that are going to come with that. One of them is what does immigration look like at the time? Obviously, Obviously, they will loosen up immigration in order to boost the population. Right. This is anybody who thinks otherwise is just lying to themselves. Oh man, isn't that funny how we're on the same page on that? I didn't even read that. I did not read that comment before answering the question. I really didn't. Thank you so much, Justin, for the $5, man. You guys are. I really appreciate the support for the channel. I really do, because it's like I love coming out here and doing it. And one of the things that I feel like I've done is oversaturated the channel with too much information or too many videos and just constantly being out here and stuff. And I just don't care. Like at this point, I really don't. I enjoy talking about this stuff. I enjoy breaking it down. I enjoy sharing the information, and I'm doing what I enjoy. Your support for the channel, it's so appreciated because it's not appreciated anywhere else but from the viewers here. And that's really where I know like where my focus is, right? Is to keep doing what it is that I'm doing and keep sharing this stuff. The more we hear it, the more we talk about it, the more we have this conversation, the better we are going to be with our position. Yeah. Justin says, in public school, the slow learner is probably the only individual that is actually learning. Yeah, I don't know. You might be right about that. I had a buddy who he was like he had a terrible he didn't grow up very well. Like he had a very bad childhood as far as like his home and upbringing and stuff like that. Got into a lot of drugs and stuff. He would not pay attention at all. Like he wouldn't do homework, wouldn't like he couldn't answer any questions when he got called on and stuff like that. And he would ace all his tests, and I always accused him of cheating. And he just like, some kids are just super bright in different ways. And I always wondered, man, like he didn't end up doing very well, but I always wondered, man, if he was able to have applied himself in a better way, what could have happened to him? But like I don't think he never really had a chance from the get-go. Uh, Greetings from Detroit. Well, greetings. Have you looked into rats who were given all the food and destroyed themselves? Ratopia. Or was it rat dystopia? What was it? Ratopia? I can't remember. It was, yeah, I've watched that little thing. It was pretty good. Uh, I have not checked in a while, but this is good. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Uh, you use the car for driving or use the car for crashing? Yeah. Deplorable's trying to own the chat. Just when you were local government issues a bond, they are enslaving houses to that. If you're a creative person, never give up. Follow your path. 98% don't. Well, I mean, I don't know what was going on that I was given such attention on this channel for the lumber videos that I had done. I know that a lot of people related to them. They were helpful and useful to them. Why it was like at the moment the absolute like critical state in my life in which that if it didn't happen like that, I don't really know where I would be right now. It was almost as if like here, man, like click, there you go. And because it's not the same, like I mean, it's like the channel's not the same. Everything is like it's way different. It was way more attention going on back then. There was way more ad revenue, way more money. Like everything was way different. And honestly, like I look back and I think some of the videos were, I mean, some of them were very helpful and useful at the time. But what it is that I'm sharing right now, I feel is so unique and so like different from what anybody else is out there sharing. And I think it's, in my opinion, it is by far more helpful and useful than anything that I have ever discussed in my life. But it's only resonating with a few people, right? It doesn't seem to really click out there with a lot of individuals. The people here who it has resonated with, it seems to really, it's really hit, right? And it's been very profound for them. Because of that, I know it's right. Like it doesn't like the success of the YouTube channel, I'm starting to come more into a better understanding is not success of the information that I was delivering. The success of the information I'm delivering is proven through the viewers who are coming back to me saying, "Bro, thank you for doing this." Like that's where the success is. The other evidence of it with the ad revenue and the popularity and the running up of subscribers and all that other stuff, that's superficial success. Like it's real. I mean, it's real in the sense that it was really profound for me in the way that it changed. But that's not really where the successful attempt was the goal of, right? Like I mean, that's evidence that you did something out there. You were at least entertaining, if nothing else, right? But when I have people who come to me and say, "Man, thank you for doing this because I was looking at things so wrong. I was deteriorated. I've quit drinking." All these other things that they come to me and talk to me about that doesn't really necessarily have to do with any kind of monetary gain or benefit in that fashion. It was just a change of experience in their life. And I'm thinking, me too, man. Right? It's not about the money or anything else. It's just like I was on a wrong path. I was not headed in the right way. Now I feel like I am. The money part of it, that like I've gone to the point that's just like, man, if I think about money being something that I need in my life ever again, I am going to give up. I'm just going to quit. It's like the last thing I need to think about is having it or needing it in my life, which is really odd considering I have a channel based on economics. But I think about that. What I was experiencing before the Uneducated Economist took off to what I am experiencing now, man, if I didn't make that switch, I don't know where I would be. And the fact that the switch really had to take an abundance of money at the time in order to flip it, right? I don't know if the money is really necessary. I wanted to enjoy my experience. I want to enjoy the ride. I want to enjoy the fact that people are entertained, that they are informed, that they are, feeling that the information is helpful and useful. These are the things that I really want, right? But all the rest of it, that would be cool too. All right. Young entrepreneur. Success without fulfillment is failure. Well, and I guess that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of the way it was like, it didn't really feel like the success that I thought it would be, right? Like, I mean, I felt like people were like, "Oh, dude, you got this really awesome, successful YouTube channel." And I'm like, I've been successful at it up to this point. Is it a successful YouTube channel? Like, I guess. Do I feel like I've been successful at what I was attempting to do? Kinda. Yeah. Like, where's success? I'm not sure if I quite got that yet. I don't know if that's, yeah. I like the pursuit of it. I like being on the path. That was, I mean, is the YouTube channel successful? And it was like, it has been at times, just like anything else, successful at fishing. Sometimes you're not, comes and goes just like everything else. Success. What is that? When I got to college, I couldn't believe how easy it was to hang out with girls. Yeah, I found the same thing when I went to the bar. All right, deplorable. Is that money helped in that section too, being that I was like 4'8". Yeah, 4'8" is not very tall. All right, I knew a kid that too, total burnout, built monster trucks, passed all critical school tests. He helped me cheat. All right, power B to the short people. That's funny. Alrighty, guys. I don't know. I didn't even check to see what the time was. I just kept talking. Weird press conference today without Jay Powell. Yeah, I thought it was a weird press conference too. I don't know how well Warsh really handled the press conference. I mean, going back and reading from like, the actual statement again, it was just like, you know, I don't know. I guess it's going to be time will tell. We'll figure out what it is that he's going to actually do with the Federal Reserve's communication and stuff. It's still going to be pretty questionable as far as like how it is how that communication is going to take place. Because without it, excuse me, the people are going to be looking for it. It's going to create a void. And without filling it with the proper communication, it's just going to be left up to whatever, economist or mainstream media narrative or whatever that's out there. So, hey, we got old Nighter up in here. Right on. All right. So, we're talking lumber, monetary policy, and short people. All right. Trump called Obama a stupid son of a bitch. Wild times. Yeah, and see, this is one of the reasons why I'm not a real big fan of Trump. Like before, I could just really care less, but the more that time goes on, the less of a fan I'm becoming. I would at least, if nothing else, to hold on to the respect of the position. I feel like what happened with even the exploiting of the White House and a UFC fight and all this, it's like, do we have to really like propaganda or not like what is it like just I don't know, exploit every opportunity that is possible. At some point, like it's time when you say, "No, man, I'm gonna have a little bit more dignity than that." And to me, like there is nothing off the table here. And so for other people, they think it's cool. They thought it was awesome. And to be honest, like, I mean, it was on when I was calling bingo, so it was up there on TV. I was gonna not watch it, but anyway, man, some of the fights were really good, and I mean, I was like, to be honest with you, I watched them. They were cool. But I think about like what it is that I would want other people to think about when they see our leadership role. If I was looking to somebody to be the ultimate leader for everything, right? I would want them to be at least in the presence that they're not screwing around. One of the things that I have learned is that people have a tendency to do things in a way that has people's approvals because of how good they were at it. Like, man, this guy is awesome at, performing this particular task and he gets like this high status for it. Donald Trump got it like that. I've seen other people do it, I've even, have it happen to me myself. But then certain things start to take place. People have this opinion of you, and then once you start relinquishing who it is that you really are, their opinion of you starts to tunk, tunk, tunk. right? It starts to fall because they didn't really know who you were and they just thought of you as some superstar. I've had that happen to me a lot, right? Like the people who know me, who like follow me on my channel for anything, like they're not surprised. But in the early days when people first saw the channel, first saw me like, on the Rebel Capitalist and stuff, I don't know what it is that they thought I was or something, but the more they got to know me, then they got like, oh man, this guy, he's just a regular person. I was just like, no kidding, right? I mean, it was like we're all just regular people. So when you think about like how it is that you are looking at this president or looking at somebody out there, and then they start using a lot of sarcasm, which can be funny. I know. I'm a comedian. I try to be the entertainer. I'm out there telling jokes and stuff like that. But then when I realized that, what sarcasm does? Is it might be entertaining, it might be funny, it might get a bit of a point across at the time. But what it does is it makes people not take you seriously. And the more you do it, the less serious people will take you. Because people eventually don't know if you're being sarcastic or not. And because you have created the energy of them not knowing whether or not to take you seriously, because you've been so sarcastic, people will just choose not to take you seriously. And this is the unfortunate consequence of doing things like Donald Trump is doing. Is that every time it happens, it becomes to the point that, hey, we're just not going to take you seriously. And when it's time to take you seriously, nobody will, because you have been so sarcastic, you've been so rude, you've been so, obnoxious, you've been so deliberate in being offensive. And because of that, hey, some people think it's great. Some people fall right in line. Some people find it funny. Some people find it approving. But nobody will respect it because they don't know when to take it seriously. Right? And that's the unfortunate part. I mean, I know because, I've experienced this again, trying to be like, there was a time when I thought it would be fun to try and do like a stand up routine to actually be on stage for an hour telling jokes. And God, what a fun time that sounds like it would be. And as I started learning more about what it is that is going on within the mindset of the Joker, right? See, why the jester had it, or why the king had a jester? A lot of people thought that the jester was there for entertainment. Like, hey man, I'm bored. Tell me some jokes, right? That's not what the jester was there for. I don't know how many people realize this, but the king had a jester because the jester was going to make light of the topic that nobody else was willing to bring up. And the king couldn't do it. He was in a position in which he had to hold on to that position. He couldn't be sarcastic. He couldn't tell these things. He couldn't bring up these certain topics because of the position that he holds and being that, holding that such high regards. So he had this little squirrely ass little jester out there to make jokes about what it is that they needed to discuss. So if he joked around about it and brought it up, once it was laughed about or once it was brought up and even shocked the people, now it can be in discussion. That was the point of the jester. He was going to say stuff that the king couldn't, right? So that the conversation could be had. Now, that's what's interesting about the jester is nobody gave the jester any kind of respect like that because of what he did. They all gave the respect to the king. All right. Trump has one chance to be the greatest ruler. He lost that chance a long time ago. You can't be the greatest ruler and have a Federal Reserve central banking system at the same time. Those two cannot possibly exist. Because what you're doing is if you keep the central banking system intact and functioning, you're driving the wedge of inequality. So there's no way that that could be a great leader. There's none. Zero chance. Right? There's no way. Um, Would you buy silver right now or wait? In what way? Like, I mean, would I buy would I load the boat with silver? No, right? But dollar cost average, absolutely. I dollar cost average no matter what the price is. So buying silver now, yeah, just don't load the boat, right? Always dollar cost average over time. People who load the boat in a particular spot is looking to make money, right? Is that what you're doing? Are you looking to position yourself so that you can make a bunch of money? Yeah, wrong channel. Right. But if you're using that as an insurance policy so that you can protect yourself against a third party risk, so that you can be outside of that third party claim. So, like, whatever happens to government and banking or whatever, you got some kind of value that says, man, whatever happens, happens. I'm not worried about that. That's the position that I've taken with it. So, if you're asking me my advice, I would dollar cost average into silver over time until you've gotten your position. And at the end of it, it doesn't really matter what you paid. How many ounces do you have? That's the only question that you should really be asking. Yeah. All right. Uneducated gesture, nomics. Yeah. A great leader loves and respects his opponents, even enemies. My advice is more money, press buttons. Oh, golly, guys. Okay, I gotta scoot closer. So the gesture was forward guidance. I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't know if it was necessarily put it like that, but I guess one could relate it like that. I'm definitely the gesture of Gary, Indiana. It's good to see you all nighter. Oh, is my phone starting to die? Okay, I got 5% power left on my phone, so I'm going to call it quits here in the next 5 minutes. Politicians aren't so much leaders as representatives of the greatest economic powers of a region. Yeah. A rare bench seat in the front. Is it for Suburbans? Is that rare? I don't know. All right. Nobody dislikes Jesus Christ. I wouldn't say that. Yeah. I mean, a few people out there seem to seem to disagree with that. I hope Simon knows that I believe those who need to know will know when I am acting sarcastic or not. Nope, they don't. It doesn't matter, deplorable, whether they know it or don't. And this is the unfortunate part about that is that it's so funny. It almost leads me to believe like we got to distinguish the two different deplorables here. Probably the same dude. Anyway, it doesn't matter if they recognize your sarcasm or not, right? That's not the issue. Like they can say no, he's being sarcastic. No, he's not being sarcastic. That part isn't the problem. The problem that comes from it is that when you are sarcastic, you have put an energy out there of them to tell them. You're literally telling them, "Do not take me seriously." Right? So one minute you'll be like, "Hey, don't take me seriously." Next minute, take me seriously. Don't take me seriously. Take me seriously. Don't take me. Take me. Don't. And then pretty soon they're like, "You know what? I don't know when to do this." Like I used to like it took like before I could figure it out, but it's costing me a lot of energy to try and figure this out. I'm just not going to take you seriously because you just talk so sarcastically all the time. I'm just going to assume that's the way it is, right? Even though I can tell the difference that it's not happening, but it's too much energy to try and figure that out, as opposed to just knowing somebody who I can take seriously 100% of the time. Like I don't question it. If they're sarcastic, that seems weird. It's just like, holy shit, are you being sarcastic right now? Because you've always been serious. Like the moment that you are sarcastic, they're like, what in the hell is happening here? Right? Like to have somebody take you that seriously, why would you not want that? Well, that's what Trump's done to the American people. Is he said, "Don't take me seriously because of all this stuff that I've done. There's some things that you should take me seriously. Some things, this, that." And finally, people are like, you know what? We've had it. We're not taking you seriously on anything anymore. That's why sarcasm, even if the people recognize it, when at the time saying he's being sarcastic, he's not, produces an energy that says, "Do not take me seriously," and then people won't. Why so serious, Simon? I don't know. You're the one who brought it up. So, I mean, I brought up the whole sarcasm thing, but you're the one who said that, people would know the difference, and they do know the difference. The only problem is it doesn't stop the change from happening. Yeah. That's a good description of Trump. Too much energy to figure him out. Well, yeah. Like, if he was somebody that you could take, like, okay, can you imagine Eisenhower doing some of these things? Like, I don't even, like, I just have to go, I don't know, I wasn't alive when Eisenhower was around. I have to go back and listen and watch some of the statements and things that they were saying from back in the day. And I tell you what, man, people took him very seriously. Like, people, like when he spoke, everybody, right? Now, that's the sort of level of seriousness that I would like to see the leadership have. Because if they don't have that, I can't take them seriously. Instead, I'm going to say sarcastic things about them because they like saying sarcastic things. Just because you are serious doesn't mean you have to take the sarcastic out. Yeah, it kind of does. Not. Yeah, it does because ultimately what you are doing is you are training somebody else to not take you seriously. You can be serious in your life. You can be serious on everything that you do, but if you are training somebody out there in the words that you are using with them to not take you seriously, then you can expect them to be in that role. Very much like understanding the role of being a follower or leader that I was learning by literally finding customers, not knowing the next step inside of the process of like literally going back to the counter to finish the transaction. Like I had to lead them back there. This is the exact same thing. If you are training somebody to not take you seriously because you are sarcastic all the time, then that's what you should expect. You trained them to think that way. Okay? You can also train them to think of you very seriously and to the point that if you were sarcastic, you would surprise them. Like, it's up to you on how you want to do it. You personally can love it. I love being sarcastic. Again, me personally, right here, I love doing it. I love being a comedian. I love being an entertainer. When I'm calling bingo, I'm telling jokes, I'm making fun of everybody in this roasting, I'm doing all the stuff. That, for those people, is perfect. It's everything that they want. They praise me, they love me, they tip me, they all the wonderfulness that comes from it, right? Inside of there, if I was to all of a sudden start talking monetary policy, everybody would get up and leave. They do not want me serious there. They want me the joker. They want me the entertainer. I cannot be serious in that moment, right? Understand your position. All right. Ugh. I'm gonna call it quits here, guys. In like literally 2 minutes here, we're gonna call it at 2 hours. All right, you're conditioning them on a subconscious level. The logical mind can distinguish the difference, but the subconscious cannot. That is absolutely right, John D. That is the best way to describe it. The conscious mind can, but the subconscious cannot. And that's very much like the people who fell into the fall, like I'm leading them, they're following, they know the next step, they know what it is that they're looking for, they still just they need me to follow, right? They need me, they can't do it on their own. Once they're snapped out of it, oh yeah, I can lead myself, okay, but until that point they were stuck in follower, right? Alright, that may be your flaw. Then? Alright. I have to chat what a true court gesture is. I'm not here to run the show. I am only here as entertainment. In the military, I got to experience good and terrible leadership. The good leaders were too focused on the mission to be sarcastic. Being sarcasm, being sarcasm neuters your efforts. Yeah, and that's and again, like understanding the position in which that you're at the time. Like if you're in a leadership position which that you're in charge of guys and you're like this is like this isn't like any moment of screwing around, right? Like everything has to be taken 100% serious the entire time. Once you're done with the mission, then you can joke around, but at this moment, it has to be taken seriously. And when somebody says something that is of a leadership position and you're used to that person being sarcastic and you don't know whether or not to take them seriously at the moment, that can be some serious issues, all right? Like in the military, you can't have that. So if somebody is just like, no, we're going to take this seriously 100% of the time, and when you're dealing with me, I want you to deal with me seriously. When I'm dealing with you, I'm going to deal with you seriously, and there's going to be no sarcasm, right? Because we got to get this mission done. There ain't no screwing around anywhere on that. Every bit of that is 100% on board with the mission accomplishment, and there's no like screwing it up, right? Then you got guys on the job site who are doing practical jokes or something like that, and it makes it very hard to like even like you know take the leadership role of those people. And when he was just like, man, I can't do this with you guys, they're joking around, screwing around, we're not having this like you know mission to get this thing done. Everybody has just kind of got on their own idea of what it is that needs to happen here. That leadership is essentially falling apart, right? And a lot of times it starts with trying to be friends and joking and all that other stuff instead of taking it seriously from the very get go, saying, well, if we can get this shit done right, then maybe we can be friends afterwards, you know? you know, not saying being mean or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. It's like, I try to think about what it is that we have for leadership in this country right now, and it's essentially non existent. Yeah. I mean, there's people who are leading it, but that's not like real leadership. It's not like I mean, it's not respectful. Uh, hey, right on. Thank you so much. Ursa? No, 2034. Thank you very much for the $1.99. Thanks again for your work. Hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate the support, guys. It's hard in the civilian work world to find groups of people mission focused. It's something a lot of veterans do struggle with. They lose that leadership when they get out. Yeah. And I could see where that's like a major problem, especially if you spend a lot of time especially if you have spent a lot of time in the military, because that's like what your experience is that everybody that you have ever dealt with was very serious. They're serious about the accomplishment of the mission and everything that they're doing. There is no screwing around. When you do screw around, it's like, you get in trouble for it. But then you get out into the civilian world and it's nothing but screwing around. And like as you're trying to take the world seriously, the world isn't taking you seriously. And you got sarcasm and and all the jokes and all the other stuff. And so yeah, I could see where that would be very difficult for people who are gotten out of the military to have to deal with going from people who are like always serious to people who are like can't take anything seriously. Why I don't like Trump? I have two fathers. I need my president to be competent. Oh, where's the real deplorable? Yeah, that's what I was wondering too on that. Deplorable, I live more conservative in my pinky fingers. Hmm. Trump is a New Yorker. It's their flavor. All right. Oh, there it goes. Okay, guys. This was fun. I enjoyed hanging out. Really, I just wanted to talk about lumber more and some of the issues that I was facing and seeing and some of the, some of the things that are coming from the vendors. This is going to be super important to the future, especially when it comes to the building industry. Any kind of pickup in building demand, and you're going to see those lumber supplies like essentially vanish. It's really interesting to see these times right now and considering what it is that we have going on as far as the questionability of the Fed and their communications. Very few people are going to have an understanding that of what we have tried to share here on the Uneducated Economist and how it is that the Federal Reserve is really positioning themselves to either be in a accommodating or restricting position based on that neutral interest rate. Again, I think this channel is incredibly unique for focusing in on just that, not necessarily just that, but focusing in on that comparatively to what it is that the other channels are looking at. And considering that the communications are going to come to an end, it's going to be even more important to understand how this is operating. And here on the Uneducated Economist, we talk about it just about every single day. So there's really no chance you can miss what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing with their monetary policy if you're joining us. Links down in the description. Be sure and join the school community. It's the best place that you can go to get the credible threat theory. It has all the speeches that I have used. Well, not all of them, but a great number of them, all broken down with highlightations so that you can go and check out the most important part of those speeches. I put together a video course. It's an hour long, great video series, super easy to understand. It does break down just about every part of the credible threat theory as far as the forward guidance goes. It's going to be even more important to understand that now than ever because they're going to start removing these things. And as most people have no idea what the Federal Reserve even is, they're going to have no idea what's being removed from it. So watching that video and listening to it and then, kind of internalizing that for what it is that's about ready to happen over the next 6 months to a year, I think is going to give you a much better understanding on how it is to position yourself, especially considering that the Fed has done like they're going to come to an end with their communication. And the only people who are going to be communicating about the Fed are going to be like whatever economists that are out there on the mainstream media or whoever it is that you've picked up as far as a, follower on YouTube. Those are the only people who are going to be talking about the Fed. So for me, I'm going right to the Fed's own words, right? Right to